What's going on, everybody? You see a Jaguar back here with GenJag.com, and I have a very special guest with me today, Blythe Brumleve from 1010XL. How you doing, Blythe?
Hi guys, doing good. Thank you for having me.
Oh, of course. So you can find Blythe on a variety of different formats. She's on 1010XL on Helmets and Heels that airs on Tuesdays, some 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock. And you can also find her on YouTube. She actually live streams all those shows on there. And she actually has a new show coming up beginning of September, primarily focused on Jaguars content. But you can also find a mix of other different stuff on there too. So thanks so much for joining me. And I got a whole bunch of Jaguars topics I want to get into with you. So I got to ask you, because 2017 was really the first year I actually started covering the Jaguars. So I had never really gone through the whole past decade of just bad teams. So you covered the team for a while. How much better was it in 2017 to cover the Jaguars? How much better was it in the city of Jacksonville? And just from your perspective, how was 2017 for you?
2017 was completely different because I think I've sort of phrased this as Brandon Albert August that we had right before the season started, and it just felt like another one of those years where it was just going to be a disaster of a season. And sort of you're questioning as a fan, because I'm also a fan. I've been a season ticket holder for more than a decade, and so having to, or almost being forced as your job to talk about a team that stinks every single year is mentally exhausting. And you have to find new angles, and you have to find some kind of storyline of something to talk about. But after the start of last season, it just made things so much easier. It was almost like a breath of life was breathed back into the show, back into Jaguars content, and really back into the city. When we started going to the playoffs, or when we knew that we were going to go to the playoffs, that's when the energy within the city was palpable. That you drive around town and there are businesses that have Jaguars signage up, and you have buildings downtown that are lighting up and saying "Go Jags." That's something I've never seen before, and it was exhilarating.
Yeah, I mean, it was awesome just going through that, because I hadn't actually been a fan of a winning Jaguars team since I was in 7th grade or something like that. So I kind of forgot about what winning was all about. And then we started off the year was kind of weird with we're good, and all of a sudden we lose. We're good, then we lose. We started off 3-3, but then we went through that hot streak, and then it led us all the way through the playoffs and up until the AFC Championship game. So on the AFC Championship game topic, I know it's something you don't really want to talk about too much, but when it comes to that game, how much did it sting for you after that game? Does it still haunt you a little bit?
I went home and cried. That's how I spent that night. And I remember I had to do a Helmets and Heels broadcast 2 days later, and I still didn't know what to say or even how to talk about the game. Because honestly, if it wasn't for the show, I wouldn't have talked to anybody about it for months. But I think it was almost kind of therapeutic to talk about it, because one of my co-hosts, Donna Murphy, she's a huge Patriots fan, and she wasn't able as a fan to be excited about the win because she knew how crushed all of the Jaguar fans are, and even people at the station were giving her crap for the Miles Jack wasn't down, and the penalties or the lack thereof that they called on the Patriots. And so she really she couldn't celebrate the team like she wanted to, and I thank God she didn't, because I probably I would have gotten a little more hostile than I did during that show.
Yeah, I know for me, I mean, it was so depressing. I worked the next day, I was walking around like a zombie. I'm not forced to talk because I'm not contracted to anybody, so I literally didn't talk about it for a week and a half. I didn't post any videos. I posted a video after, basically half crying, and then I was like, I'll see you guys whenever I see you.
Right.
So, yeah, that was kind of rough, but yeah, and then next we'll kind of go to the offseason. Now, the Jaguars were pretty busy this offseason. Obviously, they decided to extend Blake Bortles to a 3-year, $54 million deal. Later on, you thought they might be kind of quiet in free agency, but next thing you know, they signed Andrew Norwell, an All-Pro guard, to a big old contract. And then in the draft, for the first time in really, I don't even know how long, they truly went the best available player. So for you, what are your thoughts about how the Jaguars did this offseason?
I think that it's strange because you're dealing with a team that didn't have that many holes. I mean, outside of Allen Robinson leaving and choosing Chicago over Jacksonville, there really weren't that many glaring holes on this team. So it was sort of weird, waiting around on draft night, where you're waiting around all night. You're not picking in the first 30 minutes per the usual and then going about your business. You have to wait for everybody else to pick. By the time the Jaguars picked, it's just you're tired, you're ready to go to bed. But it was a good problem to have. And I just think with this Jaguars team, it's sort of a, just a blessings all around with this entire squad that you don't have a glaring hole. I mean, I know a lot of people wanted to address the quarterback position, but there wasn't that many available options out there to address. And with the resurgence of Blake Bortles' career, I really think that them showing the confidence in him to build up, to add some depth to that offensive line, I think was really crucial to Blake's confidence going into the season.
Yeah, so like while we're on the Blake Bortles topic, I kind of like to ask people this because Blake Bortles isn't really someone I like to talk about too much on my channel just because I don't feel like I can sway opinions with him very well because people have a 4-year sample size with this guy. Obviously you either love him or you hate him. So what are your thoughts of Blake Bortles with the whole extension, and do you think that he can be our franchise guy?
I think that he has a very good chance to be the franchise guy. I was one that was very hard on Blake, not this past season, but the season before. And you really saw a storyline develop throughout last season. And I think that you saw with Blake that his confidence was building game after game after game, and you slowly started seeing the team sort of rally around him. And I think that we were watching his confidence build up in real time. And so I think that that's helped his career tremendously. The way he performed in the playoffs was above my expectations. I thought that as long as he just doesn't lose the game for us, then we'll be okay. Coming into this season, I think adding to his confidence, all the reports from camp is that he's been looking stellar, and he's been improved with his mechanics and all that good stuff. The only question I really have remaining for him is that he hasn't won the game yet. If we're down big, he hasn't come back and stormed with the offense in order to drive the team to a win. He's won before. He won against Buffalo with his legs, but I really want to see him win a game. It doesn't matter with his legs or his arms. I don't really care as long as he wins the game. But if the Jaguars come into a situation where they're down big early, he's got to be able to prove that he's that guy.
Yeah, and that's one thing that was interesting because I remember on the Jaguars, because obviously I'm a UCF guy, so I watched basically all his games, and one thing I really liked about him was that he was able to lead into the game comebacks, and it's just weird because he's really on the Jaguars, hasn't really been able to come back and do that. But you saw him in the playoffs, obviously no turnovers. But I think in the Patriots game, he wasn't the reason why we lost. I know a lot of people kind of like to put that game on him just because, obviously the last drive he didn't score a touchdown with it.
I blame the defense more than anything.
I think I would blame the coaching staff just because, on defense we went a prevent defense where we're basically going cover 4, allowing all these bubble, all these hitch routes, under AJ Boya, basically first down catches all throughout the, game. Obviously, the coaching staff, the offense coordinator are running on first down every time, forcing us to have these 3rd and long throws. And any quarterback, unless you're a Hall of Fame kind of caliber guy, that's not a good position to really put your quarterback in.
And Corey Grant, they didn't utilize him at all in the second half, and that was their probably their best player in the first half. Yeah,
so a lot of people like to do the whole Miles Jack wins a down thing. There's honestly a whole different kind of all different kinds of things to really blame it on, but I don't like to put it on the refs. It's just not on me, but I would just really think it's the coaching staff. But as far as 2018 goes, I want to know, after this great year that the Jaguars had in 2017 after the offseason, what are your expectations for the Jaguars in 2018?
I honestly, I've held back on saying this a lot, but I've slowly started to speak it into existence. But I really think that we're going to the Super Bowl. And I think that, Tony Romo, some national guys earlier this week were saying the same thing. And I just don't see a flaw in this team. If they play up to par of how they played last season, I think that it's a very, very real chance. And it feels weird even saying this coming out of my mouth, but it's definitely a real possibility that we're Super Bowl. And to me, it's playoffs or bust. But the ultimate goal is always a Super Bowl.
Yeah, especially if you look at the AFC, if you compare the AFC to the NFC, really there were so many different teams in the NFC that could come out and really be playoff teams. But in the AFC, really what elite teams you had last year, probably Patriots, Steelers, and Jaguars. I think the 4th best team in the AFC didn't even make the playoffs, and that was the Chargers. So I think we have a really a good route to try to get to the Super Bowl. So they're my Super Bowl team as well. Am I biased? I don't know.
Who cares?
But yeah, we'll go on. The final thing I kind of want to talk about is that you're on kind of a unique show on Tuesday nights, Helmets and Heels, which is hosted by all women. Now, usually when obviously the radio business is kind of a male dominated kind of industry where usually you'll see the 2 guy hosts and maybe a woman that is kind of a side thing. But
news chick.
yeah, the kind of girl on there. But you know, that show is obviously hosted by like all women. So kind of how did this idea get like brought up? Who kind of started this all, and like how has this whole show been going for you guys?
Well, it's been going pretty great. We're going into our 4th football season now. We still have the original trio there. We've had a few others as far as the fourths are concerned. We had Jessica Blaylock, Amanda Borges, Jordan Diarman. Those have been the other 4th heel at a certain time, but they've all moved on to really great careers. One's with the New York Rangers. Jordan's up in Chicago working for that station, and then Jessica is still working in South Florida with the Miami Marlins and the Florida Panthers. So it's almost like a stepping stone, I think, for a lot of women. For us, we're the original trio. It's really great because we've been in Jacksonville for so long, so it's almost like this is our baby. Like this is what we look forward to every week. And we're different from like a typical like daily show that you would hear. A daily show is not nearly as planned out. You take breaking news in as it comes, and you talk about those topics. With our show, it's very pre-planned, and we have to discover what were the best storylines from the weekend, and then figure out which ones are the most important that we want to talk about. We each get to pitch our own ideas as far as show topics are concerned. So it's very much planned, it's organized, and it's completely conducted by women. So it's sort of a weird thing to even say. I know some football fans, especially females, would see a title like Helmets and Heels and think, oh no, that's too gimmicky, I'm not going to watch. But our content is just as good as any other show. I would put it up to par with any other show in the country as far as how we talk about things, where we come from, as far as different viewpoints, and it's a challenge each and every week, and I look forward to it.
One cool thing about the show is, like I said, she obviously live streams it all on her YouTube channel, Guys Girls Media. You can find it in the link down below. And then she's actually going to be interviewing me, so there's going to be an interview there on her channel. So definitely go check that out. We'll be switching roles a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it's awesome, being able to interact with her during her actual like Helmets and Heels shows. You can kind of see what they talk about in between commercial breaks, see what kind of shit they talk about people. So it's really cool. So Blythe, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Last name ever, first name greatest, like a sprained ankle, boy, ain't nothing to play with.